Alright you guys, so we're back with another mixing video. If you haven't seen my previous video on sampling R&B, we're going to be using that beat, so make sure you watch that video first. And also you can see that I'm in a new room, and I know a lot of you guys been talking about how it sounds very echoey in the videos. Trust me, I'm working on it, and I definitely appreciate you guys for still watching. We're going to get that situated, but without further ado, let's just jump into the video. Alright, so let's hear the beat unmixed.
I just need some loving here. Just give it to me right now, yeah. I just need some loving here. Just give it to me right now, yeah.
Now let's hear the beat mixed.
I just need some loving here. Just give it to me right now, yeah. I just need some loving here. Just give it to me right now, yeah. To me right.
Off the bat, you could just hear that delay on the vocals, and you can hear the bass is more thick because there's more harmonics across the EQ spectrum. So we're just gonna get into all of that, and I'm gonna break down each plugin that I use. So let's just start off with the bass. Let's solo. The first thing that I put was the limiter, and I put a limiter because without it, it was only hitting around like 18 dB. And the thing about mixing on MPC Live, I know a lot of people get frustrated because it's not as visual as you being on a DAW, but I learned to challenge yourself. Have this be the opportunity to really train your ears. When I put the limiter, let's look at the levels again. Now it's hitting around like -10, which is good. So I just wanted to turn it up a bit, and all I did was bring up the gain about 4.3 decibels. I didn't mess with anything else. So if you ever need to turn up anything, you can just use the limiter. And as long as you don't put your ceiling low, it's not gonna compress it. It's just gonna turn up the volume. And then I went to add some distortion. Now, if you look at the EQ spectrum, you have like your lows, your low mids, and so on and so forth. And the reason why your 808s ain't booming is because it's only staying in the lows. You need to add that distortion and saturation so that it can go across the spectrum. It don't have to get all the way to the highs, but adding distortion and saturation could go from the low to the low mids to the mids, and then that's how you really make your bass stand out on different monitors. And I just used the air distortion, and I used the preset solo guitar. So let's just hear it with it off. On. So that's like day and night. And I didn't have to adjust anything. And then I just added a stereo width. I don't really need it. Sometimes you would think like a sound is in mono, but it's really in stereo. And you can find this stereo width plugin in the modulation tab. So if you go here, it's in the modulation tab. So that's pretty much that for the bass. So with the drums, I didn't think too much about it. So if you scroll all the way to the bottom effects, they have vintage effects of the sound emulation from older MPCs. In my head, off the back, I just thought about, what would the older sound sound like? Most of them have like this tape emulation or like analog kind of sound to it. And usually when it comes to analog or tape emulation, it has a lot of air in it. It has a lot of presence in the highs. So just me thinking in that way, I know that I can make my kick sound more brighter and kick through the mix a lot more. So let's just hear the MPC 3000, but first let's hear it off. On. Now when it comes to mixing and trying to hear like little subtle changes, what helps for me is to play the rhythm in my head, go along with it, like ta, ta, da 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 ta. Because if you could have the rhythm playing in your head, it's going to be a lot easier for some reason to just hear the effects. Let me know if you do that in the comments. Then I just added the SP1200. Off. Just bring in more presence, and then I just use a compressor to just glue the dynamic together, because you know you have your hi-hats hitting at a certain range and your snares hitting at a certain range and your kicks hitting, and this is bringing them a bit closer to sound more in your face and more linear. You just gotta mess around with the threshold. I went down to like -15 where I could really hear that my kicks were getting very close to my hi-hats. Let's just hear what it would sound like if I went all the way to 20. Like you can see it's getting very even with your hi-hats, but you don't want that. And you can also use your eyes and see that the attenuation is only at like -3 when you have it at like -10 dB. So I was using my eyes to see how much attenuation I wanted and also using my ears. And I just find the sweet spot to be around 15.6 dB. And then I have my attack a bit higher than usual, just so that the transient peaks ain't getting cut off. And the transient peaks is just the initial beginning of your sound. So if you look at the sample of a kick, it's like a sideways triangle, and that beginning part is your transient. I made sure to just have a little bit of attack, and then I made my release low so that it's not being compressed all the way through. And with the ratio, you can actually bring up the ratio a bit more so it can sound a bit thicker and tame it a bit better. My thing is, I just always look out for the attenuation. If I'm going over like -10 or -6, that's probably way too much. So I just kind of kept it around that range. So now let's just hear the kicks and the 808 together. Now some will say, yeah, you got to side change it to use the mother ducker, but it's all about context. This kick is not very low and heavy, so I don't feel the need to go ahead and put side chaining on it. You always got to just use your ears. If anything, to make my kick stand out more, I would just go to the bass, go to the EQ, go to air parametric EQ, and then I would just go to the lows and turn down the lows. I'm gonna just exaggerate it a bit so we could just find the sweet spot, and then go to the hertz and mess around with the hertz. So if you're using an EQ mixing cheat sheet, which I always recommend, especially on the MPC Live 2, you can find out where your kicks usually hit. So you can find that sweet spot and just dip it in your bass. You can mess around with it using this Q link. And also, we can mess around with the shape of it. So right now it's on shelf, but I want to have it on bell, because if I have it on shelf, it's going to cut everything before 100 hertz. I'm just going to use the bell curve. So let's just play with the kick. Around 113 hertz, I could just hear the kick just kicking through a bit more than usual. So then I could just use my gain and bring it back up. When it comes to the MPC, you want to A-B a lot. This is why I'm doing the video in this kind of style, so I could show you guys that it's going to come down to A-Bing a lot and going to the extreme and bringing it back down. Now, you don't want to dip too much, so that's why I just went with -2, because the bell curve, you can control it with the middle section, which is the Q, the bandwidth, but I'm not going to mess around too much with it. I can already hear a difference, so for me, it's already good. Let's just hear it with it off. Really listening to that kick. That little subtle change, you can just hear the kick just kick through a lot more. Now let's go to the actual sample chop. I didn't really do too much. As you can see, I just have an EQ and a compressor. So let's just look at the EQ that I chose. And my favorite EQ right now when it comes to like sharp EQs is Air Kill. And I'm gonna show you why. So let's hear it without it. Like you can really hear low end in that sound, and you don't want low end in your sound when you have your bass. So mixing is all about making space for each other. Now let's hear it with it on. And I'm using a preset called No Kick Drum. And then I just use a compressor to bring up the sound and bring back that dynamic into the chop. And you can see I went extreme with the threshold a little to -21 dB, but the attenuation is very low. So let's hear that with the drums and the bass. Like to me, I feel like the sample chops fit right into the beat. And what the compressor does, it just makes it a lot linear in your face, so it don't sound like it's being drowned by your drums or your bass. And usually when you're mixing, you want to start off with your levels first. And if you haven't seen my video on how to mix on the MPC, I advise you to watch that one first, and then you'll understand this even more. I skipped over the leveling on this one because the beat is already level. Like when I make my beats, I'm usually leveling while I make them. And you should get into the habit of mixing while you're making a beat. Let me know in the comments too if you actually mix while you make the beat. For me, it's a good habit to have. If you could do a little bit, like put an EQ on sound that has a lot of low end, then you could pick the right bass. You don't want to wait to the end to put a delay and a reverb on a dry sound. Now let's just go to the last thing, which is the vocal chop. So I'm gonna just solo it. You know, I just went with an EQ to thicken up the vocals, and it wasn't really necessary, but it just sounds good.
I just need some loving here. Just give it
Dry
to
vocals.
me right now, yeah. I just need some loving here. Just give it.
You can also look at what it's doing too. So it boosted the low end and it boosted the low mids a lot. So that's why it sounded a bit muffly. So if you don't want that, just go to the low mids and just turn it down a bit.
I just need some loving here. Just give it to me right now, yeah. I just need some loving here. Just give it to me right now, yeah.
I just added a little bit more bass in the vocals. It just sounded a bit right, so I just kept it that way. You know, there's no right or wrong to mixing, but there is fundamental practices that put you on the right path. And then I just added a reverb, and I didn't use the aux because I wanted the reverb to push the vocals back into the mix. I didn't want it to be on a send or anything like that, because then it's just gonna still have it in front of your face. When you put reverb directly on your sound, it pushes it back into the mix. So that's what I did. I went with reverb small.
I just need some loving here. Just give it to me right now, yeah.
Off.
I just need some loving here. Just give it to me right now, yeah.
To me, it just softened the vocals a bit up and it just pushed it back a little. And then I just used the air delay. The air delay was very essential when it came to this part.
To me right, to me right, to me right now, yeah. Now,
Versus.
Yeah. To me right, to me right. To me right now, yeah, now, yeah.
Instead of it just cutting off abruptly at that part, I had a delay go on and I just used the air delay and I used the preset 8 delay. For me, I really enjoy the presets on the MPC because they're quite decent and you can always mix it up or choose different ones too.
I just need some loving here. Just give it to me right now, yeah. I just need.
Dotted 8 delay sounds good. You could just mess with the timing a bit, but the 8 delay already sounded nice.
I just need some loving here. Just give it to me right.
I literally didn't mess with anything. With everything together, now it sounds more cohesive.
I just need some loving here. Just give it to me right now, yeah. I just need some loving here. Just give it to me right now, yeah. To me right, to me right, to me right now, yeah, now, yeah. To me right, to me right, to me right now, yeah, now, yeah. I just need some loving here.
If you like this video, like and subscribe if you found it helpful. Share with your other producer friends that are on the MPC Live too. And if you have any questions or want me to cover any topic on the MPC, comment below as well. And until next time, peace.